At 12:17 a.m., a black single father walked into Halcyon Air Harbor with rain dripping from his hoodie and his feverish 7-year-old daughter asleep on his shoulder, clutching a silver moth her late mother had sewn by hand. He asked for one thing: a quiet chair in the private lounge while his aircraft was prepared. The concierge looked at his wet sneakers and said, "Sir, this terminal is for verified private clients, not people hiding from the weather." 6 minutes later, that same glass door opened for a wealthy investor whose paperwork was not even complete. When the father asked for the terminal director, security was called. Then his daughter woke up and whispered, "Daddy, do we have to look rich before they let us sit down?" Nobody knew the man being escorted back into the storm owned the lounge, the jet outside, and every runway light glowing in the rain. Before the night was over, one man would lose his badge, and one woman would learn the difference between protocol and prejudice. Isaiah Calder had not planned to come to Halcyon Air Harbor looking like a man who had lost a fight with the weather. The storm had caught them 20 minutes outside Briarhaven, where Marrowfield Road narrowed between 2 rows of black pine trees, and the runway lights appeared in the distance like a string of small white promises. His truck's heater had been working badly since Raleigh. Noelle had slept through most of it, curled sideways in the passenger seat with moth tucked under her chin and one small hand resting against the fogged window. Every few minutes, Isaiah had reached across the console and touched the back of his fingers to her forehead. Too warm. Not dangerous yet, but warm enough that he kept counting the miles. He had told himself the same thing for the last 40 minutes. Just get her inside. Just get her warm. Just get her somewhere quiet. Halcyon Air Harbor sat beyond a private security gate, a long glass building pressed low against the dark field. At night, with rain moving across the floodlights, the place looked less like an airport terminal and more like a showroom for people who had never been told no. White stone floors, walnut walls, soft leather chairs arranged in careful clusters. A coffee bar, still open after midnight. Behind the glass, private aircraft rested in the rain with their noses turned toward the runway. Isaiah knew every inch of the building, not because he liked luxury. He had never cared much for rooms that looked expensive just to prove they could. He knew it because Naomi had cared. Before she died, Naomi Calder had stood inside the unfinished shell of this terminal wearing a yellow hard hat that sat crooked over her braids, one hand on her pregnant stomach, the other holding a paper cup of vending machine tea. "There should be chairs near the entrance," she had said. Isaiah had looked at the open concrete floor. "There will be chairs everywhere." "No," Naomi said, "not decorative chairs, real ones. Close enough that a tired person doesn't have to earn the right to sit down." He had laughed then, not because it was funny, because she had a way of making kindness sound like engineering. That was Naomi. She could look at a millionaire's terminal and think first about a tired stranger's knees. 7 years later, Isaiah pushed through the automatic doors carrying their daughter on his shoulder, and the first thing he noticed was that the chairs Naomi had asked for were still there. The second thing he noticed was that no one offered him one. Grant Sable stood behind the client reception desk, his navy suit cut tight at the shoulders, his silver name badge polished bright enough to catch the overhead lights. He was handsome in the practiced way of men who believed presentation was a form of authority. His hair was perfect. His smile was not. The moment Isaiah stepped onto the white stone floor, Grant's eyes moved over him in one quick sweep. Hoodie, wet jeans, old sneakers, child, no luggage, no assistant, no visible wealth. Isaiah watched the calculation happen. He had seen it before in hotel lobbies, boardrooms, dealerships, donor events, restaurants with white tablecloths, and once years ago, at the emergency room desk while Naomi was bent over in pain and a clerk asked if they were sure they were in the right entrance. Some looks did not need words. They arrived already translated. Grant's hand hovered near the keyboard. "Good evening," Isaiah said. His voice was low because Noelle was sleeping. "I need access to the North Star Lounge. Tail number NV 731Q. My aircraft should be in prep." Grant blinked once at the word aircraft, as if Isaiah had used the wrong language. "Name?" "Isaiah Calder." Grant typed it in, too quickly, not searching, performing the act of searching. Isaiah adjusted Noelle's weight. Her cheek was hot against his neck. Moth's silver wing brushed the zipper of his hoodie with a faint scratch. Grant looked at the screen, then back at Isaiah. I'm not seeing a personal authorization under that name. Check North Star Vellum Holdings. Grant's jaw shifted. Sir, ownership entities require pre-clearance. We can't grant lounge access based on a holding company name. I understand that, Isaiah said. Check the restricted owner file attached to the tail number. Grant's eyes cooled a little. Not much. Just enough. Behind him, a young woman at the secondary desk looked up. Her name badge read, Tessa Wren. She had a stack of printed manifests beside her elbow and a pen tucked behind one ear. For half a second, her fingers moved toward her keyboard. Grant saw it. Tessa, he said, without looking away from Isaiah. Can you confirm the coffee service for Mr. Vale? Tessa's hand stopped. Yes, she said quietly. Isaiah noticed. He noticed small things because small things were usually where the truth hid. Grant folded his hands on the counter. I'm sorry, Mr. Calder, but this terminal doesn't operate like a commercial airport. We have privacy rules, verification rules, client environment rules. My daughter has a fever, Isaiah said. I'm not asking you to bend anything. I'm asking you to check what I gave you. Grant glanced at Noelle then, but not the way people look at a sick child. He looked the way people look at a complication. I understand, he said, but we can't allow unverified walk-ins into the private lounge. The word walk-ins sat between them. Isaiah looked through the glass doors behind Grant. The North Star lounge was nearly empty. 12 leather chairs, a low couch, a fireplace that did not need to be real to look warm, a folded blanket on the arm of the nearest seat. Noelle stirred. Isaiah lowered his voice further. She just needs to lie down for a few minutes. Grant gave him a polite smile that had no life in it. There are benches near the public transportation area outside the main gate. Outside, in the rain, with a child burning warm against his shoulder. Isaiah did not move. A black SUV pulled up under the canopy beyond the entrance. 2 men stepped out first, then a third man in a charcoal overcoat with a leather carry-on and a phone already pressed to his ear. A woman with a tablet hurried beside him, trying to shield the device from the rain. Grant's face changed before the door even opened. The smile arrived. Real this time. Mr. Vale, Grant said, stepping away from Isaiah as though the matter in front of him had already been resolved. Welcome back to Halcyon. Preston Vale walked in without slowing down. He did not lower his phone. He did not look at Isaiah. Aircraft ready? Preston asked. We're just finalizing one item, Grant said smoothly. Please, come into the lounge. We'll make you comfortable while we sort it out. Tessa looked at Grant, then at Isaiah, then down at her screen. Isaiah heard the soft click of the glass lounge door unlocking. He watched Preston Vale walk through it. No one asked him to wait outside. No one asked him to prove he belonged. No one looked at his shoes. The blanket on the leather chair disappeared behind the closing glass. For the first time that night, something in Isaiah's face changed. Not anger. Something quieter. The kind of stillness that came when a man stopped hoping a mistake would correct itself. Grant returned to the desk. Now, he said, keeping his voice gentle enough for anyone nearby to think he was being reasonable. As I explained, we cannot accommodate you tonight. Isaiah looked at him. You just accommodated a man whose paperwork isn't complete. Grant's smile thinned. Mr. Vale is a known client, and I asked you to verify that I am one. A pause. The rain tapped hard against the glass behind them. Tessa did not look up, but her shoulders had gone tight. Grant leaned forward slightly. Sir, I'm going to be direct with you. This is a private aviation terminal. People can't simply come in from the weather and claim aircraft access. Isaiah held his eyes for 2 seconds, then 3. Noelle's breathing shifted against his neck. He reached up and steadied her gently. I'd like to speak with the terminal director. Grant's expression changed again. This time, he did not hide his irritation fast enough. From the office behind the glass wall, Vivienne Rowe looked up. She had already been watching. Vivienne Rowe did not come out immediately. That was the first thing Isaiah noticed. She stood behind the glass wall of the director's office with one hand resting on the back of a white leather chair, watching the reception desk as if she were studying a weather pattern she had already decided would pass. She was in her early 40s, dressed in a cream-colored blazer with a narrow gold watch at her wrist, and her hair pulled back so neatly it looked almost architectural. Nothing about her seemed rushed. Nothing about her seemed uncertain. That was the kind of presence Halcyon Air Harbor liked to sell. Calm, expensive, controlled. Isaiah had approved the design of that office 11 months earlier, without ever meeting the person who would stand inside it tonight. The glass was Naomi's idea. Not this exact glass, not this exact wall, but the principle of it. No hidden rulers, she had said once years before, tapping a pencil against a drawing spread across their kitchen table. If people are making decisions about guests, guests should be able to see them. Isaiah remembered teasing her. "You want transparency in an airport lounge?" Naomi had looked up at him over her glasses. "I want people with power to remember they're being watched by the people affected by it." Now Vivian Rowe stood behind that very glass and watched a sick child sleep on her father's shoulder. She did not move until Grant turned toward her and lifted his chin slightly. A signal, not a request, a signal between people who had done this before. Vivienne opened the office door and walked out. The sound of her heels on the stone floor changed the temperature of the room without raising the volume. Grant straightened before she reached him. Tessa lowered her eyes to the manifest sheets. Even Preston Vale, visible behind the lounge glass, turned his head with mild interest. Vivienne stopped beside Grant, not in front of him. That mattered. It placed them on the same side of the counter. Two uniforms of authority facing one man in a wet hoodie with a child on his shoulder. "Good evening," Vivienne said. Her voice was smooth enough to make the words sound almost kind. "I'm Vivian Rowe, Terminal Director. I understand there's been an issue with verification." Isaiah shifted Noelle carefully so her head stayed against the dry part of his shoulder. "There has." Grant gave a small breath through his nose, the kind of sound people make when they are trying to appear patient. "Ms. Rowe," he said, "Mr. Calder arrived without prior clearance under his personal name. He has requested access to the North Star Lounge and aircraft preparation area. We have no active individual authorization matching his ID. I explained the privacy policy, but he's refusing to leave the desk area." Isaiah looked at Grant, not sharply, just long enough to mark the lie. Tessa's pen stopped moving. Vivienne did not look at Tessa. She looked at Isaiah's hoodie, then his shoes, then the sleeping child, then the rainwater still collecting in small dark spots on the floor beneath him. A staff member with a towel had been standing 10 feet away near the coffee bar since Isaiah entered. He had not offered it. "I'm not refusing to leave," Isaiah said. "I'm asking you to verify the information your concierge refused to check." Vivienne's expression did not change. "What information?" "Northstar Vellum Holdings. Tail number NV731Q. Restricted owner file." For the first time, something moved behind her eyes. Not recognition. Caution. Grant stepped in quickly. "I checked the standard client screen. There's no personal lounge clearance under Isaiah Calder." "I didn't ask for the standard client screen," Isaiah said. Grant's mouth tightened. Vivian lifted one hand, a small gesture, enough to silence both men. "Mr. Calder," she said, "private aviation is built around confidentiality. Many of our clients use holding companies, trusts, representatives, and restricted travel profiles. We don't grant access because someone knows an entity name or a tail number. That's why I asked him to check the restricted owner file." Vivian held his gaze. "And I am explaining that we cannot open restricted files for an unverified walk-in." There it was again. Walk-in. Isaiah heard it land differently this time because Vivian said it cleaner than Grant had. Grant's version had been dismissive. Vivienne's version came dressed as policy. That was more dangerous. Policy gave prejudice somewhere to hide. Isaiah looked past her for 1 second. Through the lounge glass, Preston Vale had taken the blanket from the armchair and tossed it across the back of the couch without unfolding it. His assistant stood near the fireplace, speaking into her phone. A server placed bottled water on a low table in front of him. No one asked Preston to step outside while his paperwork was completed. No one called him a walk-in. No one made his body prove it belonged in the room. Isaiah looked back at Vivian. "My daughter has a fever," he said. "Your lounge is empty. I have given you the holding company, the tail number, and the exact file category. I'm asking for verification, not special treatment." Vivian's eyes flicked to Noelle. For a moment, the room almost had a chance. Noelle's cheek was flushed against Isaiah's hoodie. One hand was curled around Moth's silver wings so tightly that the old fabric had folded under her fingers. Her lips were parted slightly, and each breath came warm against her father's neck. Vivienne saw it. Isaiah knew she saw it. Then Preston knocked once on the lounge glass with 2 knuckles. Not hard, just enough. Vivienne turned. Preston lifted his phone from his ear. "Vivienne," he called through the glass, voice muffled but clear enough. "How much longer is this going to take?" Grant moved at once. "I'll handle it, Mr. Vale." Vivienne looked back at Isaiah. The almost chance closed. "I'm sorry about your daughter," she said. The words were correct. The room they came from was not. But we cannot allow emotional circumstances to override security protocols. Isaiah nodded once, slowly. Not agreement, understanding. He understood exactly what she had chosen. Behind Vivienne, Tessa's fingers moved across her keyboard. Very quietly, one key at a time. She was trying not to be seen doing it. Grant saw her anyway. "Tessa," he said. She froze. Grant did not turn fully toward her. "Coffee service." Tessa swallowed. "Yes, but on the edge of her screen, Isaiah caught a line before she minimized it. Northstar vellum holdens, restrict vellum holdens, restricted beneficial no manner file." A small yellow lock icon sat beside it. Grant had seen it. Vivienne had not. Isaiah did not point. Not yet. He had learned a long time ago that people who were determined not to see could look straight at evidence and call it inconvenience. Vivienne adjusted the cuff of her blazer. "Mr. Bai, Calder, we have a heated waiting area outside the main terminal gate. I can ask one of our staff to bring you water and help you contact a hotel." Isaiah looked at her. "A hotel? Yes. My aircraft is outside." Vivienne's face remained composed, but her patience thinned around the edges. "Your alleged aircraft cannot be accessed without verified clearance." Grant lowered his voice. "Ms. Rowe, Mr. Vale's departure window is approaching. We should clear the desk, not help the guest, not verify the file. Clear the desk." Isaiah felt Noelle shift against him again. Her forehead pressed hotter into his neck. He adjusted her with both arms this time, gently, carefully. The way a man handles the only thing in the room that matters. Moth slipped slightly from Noelle's hand. Isaiah caught it before it fell. For a second, the silver wing rested in his palm. Naomi's stitches were still there, uneven, patient, done by hand during a hospital night when she had already known more than she told him. He tucked Moth back under Noelle's fingers. Then he looked at Vivienne. "I want your full name and title." Grant blinked. Vivienne's chin lifted by a fraction. "You have my name. For the record." The words changed something. Not much. Enough. Vivienne studied him more carefully now, as though she had expected embarrassment and found documentation instead. "Vivienne Rowe," she said. "Terminal Director, Halcyon Air Harbor." Isaiah nodded. "And him?" Grant's eyes hardened. Vivienne glanced at Grant. Grant's sable. "Senior Client Concierge." Grant gave a tight smile. "I'd be happy to provide a business card once we conclude this." Isaiah looked at him. "No need." The quiet made the words heavier. Preston knocked again on the glass. This time he did not bother making it subtle. Vivienne's mouth pressed into a line. "Mr. Calder," she said, "I have tried to be respectful, but you are now disrupting active client operations. If you continue standing at this desk, I will have security escort you from the terminal." The word security traveled across the white stone floor. A man near the coffee bar looked away. The server inside the lounge stopped pouring water. Tessa's face went still. Isaiah did not move. He looked past Vivienne to the chairs beyond the glass, the ones Naomi had insisted on. Real chairs, close enough that a tired person did not have to earn the right to sit down. Then he looked back at the terminal director. His voice stayed low because his daughter was still sleeping. "Then call them." Vivienne's eyes narrowed slightly. Isaiah held her gaze. "I want this official." For the first time that night, Grant did not smile. Vivienne looked toward the far end of the terminal. 2 security guards had been standing near the frosted side doors, pretending they were not waiting for exactly this. Vivienne gave one short nod. The guard on the left touched his radio. The guard on the right stepped forward. And in Isaiah's arms, Noelle began to wake. Noelle woke before the guards reached them. Not fully. Not at first. Her small body shifted against Isaiah's shoulder, and her fingers tightened around Moth as if the silver stuffed animal were the first thing she needed to find before she could trust the room around her. The radio crackled again. That was what brought her eyes open. A thin burst of static. A man's voice from somewhere near the side doors, then the low sound of shoes crossing stone. Isaiah felt the change in her before he saw it. The way a child's breathing stops being sleep and becomes listening. He turned his head slightly. "You're okay," he whispered. Noelle blinked into the white terminal lights. Her face was flushed. A damp curl stuck to her forehead. For 2 seconds, she did not understand where she was. Then she saw the glass lounge, the leather chairs, the fireplace, the rain streaking down the windows. Then she saw Grant, Vivian, the 2 security guards walking toward them. Her hand moved up and found the wet fabric of Isaiah's hoodie. "Daddy, I'm right here." Her eyes moved to the guards again. One of them was tall and heavy through the shoulders, with a gray beard trimmed close and a badge clipped to his belt. His name tag read Harlan Pike. The other was younger, broader, and kept one hand resting near the radio on his chest, as if he had been trained to make the gesture look natural. They stopped on either side of Isaiah, not touching him. Not yet. But close enough for everyone in the terminal to understand what the picture meant. A black father in a wet hoodie, a sick child, 2 security guards, a terminal director in a cream blazer, a wealthy man watching from behind glass. The room had become very quiet. Not silent. Quiet. There was a difference. Silence had peace in it. This did not. This was the kind of quiet people made when they wanted something uncomfortable to happen without their names attached to it. A server inside the lounge pretended to adjust a tray that was already straight. The man near the coffee bar looked down at his phone and did not tap the screen. Preston Vale stood behind the glass with his arms folded, his mouth set in a thin line of inconvenience. Tessa Wren sat at the secondary desk with both hands in her lap. Her screen still glowed behind the stack of manifests. The yellow restricted file icon sat half hidden in the corner. Grant stepped back from the counter, giving the guards space. That small movement told Isaiah everything. Grant had created the distance before the truth could create one for him. Vivian held her posture. Her eyes were on Isaiah, but not all the way. Some part of her attention had shifted toward the lounge glass, toward Preston, toward the kind of client Halcyon had trained her to protect first. Harlan Pike cleared his throat. "Sir," he said, voice careful, "we need you to come with us." Isaiah did not look at him immediately. He looked at Noelle. Her eyes had gone wide now, not crying, not panicked. Watching, that was worse. Panic passed through children quickly sometimes. Watching stayed. Isaiah lowered her from his shoulder with slow care, one arm behind her back, one hand under her knees, until her sneakers touched the stone floor. She swayed a little. He steadied her. Then he crouched in front of her, right there in the middle of Halcyon Air Harbor, while the terminal director waited and the security guard stood beside him. He zipped her little jacket up to her chin. He smoothed the wet curl from her forehead. He put Moth back into the crook of her arm. And he looked into her eyes. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said. Noelle swallowed. Her voice came out small. "Are we in trouble?" "No." "Then why are they standing like that?" Isaiah heard someone in the lounge shift their weight. He did not look over. "They made a mistake," he said. Noelle looked past him at Vivian. Then at Grant. Then at the empty chairs behind the glass. The chairs were soft and deep and close enough that she could have reached one in 8 steps. A folded cream blanket sat on the arm of the nearest one. Noelle stared at it for a long moment. Children had a way of looking at things adults had taught themselves not to see. Then she asked the question, not loudly, not dramatically, just clearly enough for the words to travel. "Daddy, do we have to look rich before they let us sit down?" The terminal stopped breathing. That was how it felt. The server inside the lounge froze with one hand on a glass bottle. The younger security guard looked down. Harlan Pike's jaw moved once, like he had started to say something and decided against it. Tessa closed her eyes for half a second. Grant's face hardened. Vivian did not move, but something in her expression changed. A small fracture. Not enough to become an apology. Enough to become discomfort. Noelle tugged on Isaiah's sleeve. "I can sit on the floor," she whispered. That hurt him more than the first question. Isaiah kept his face calm because she needed his face to be calm. He had learned that after Naomi died, children read the world through the face of the parent who remains. If he broke, the room would become dangerous to her in a way no lawyer could fix. So he did not break. He put one hand gently on her shoulder. "No, baby," he said. "You don't sit on the floor because someone else forgot how to open a door." Grant gave a short breath. "Mr. Calder, this is becoming inappropriate." Isaiah stood. Slowly, the room seemed to rise with him. "Inappropriate," he repeated. Grant lifted his chin. "You are making this more difficult than it needs to be." Isaiah looked at him then. Fully. Grant's eyes held for a second, then moved away first. Vivienne stepped in. "Mr. Burr, Calder, I understand your daughter's upset, but we cannot allow this situation to continue in front of other clients." Noelle looked up at her. "I'm not upset," she said. Vivienne stopped. Noelle held Moth tighter. "I'm just tired." The words were so plain they left no room for defense. For the first time, Vivienne looked directly at the child instead of around her. Noelle's cheeks were red. Her eyelids were heavy. One shoelace had come loose and dragged against the polished floor. Moth's silver wing was bent under her arm. The old stitches Naomi had sewn by hand showed along the seam, uneven and stubborn. Vivienne saw those things. Isaiah watched her see them. Then Grant spoke again. "Ms. Rowe, with respect, Mr. Vale is still waiting." The fracture in Vivienne's face closed, not completely, but enough. That was the choice. Isaiah saw it happen. She chose the man behind the glass, the man with the overcoat, the assistant, the known name, the kind of client whose irritation was treated like weather to be managed before it became a storm. Vivienne turned to Harlan. "Escort them outside." Harlan did not move right away. The delay lasted less than a second, but Isaiah noticed it. So did Grant. "Harlan," Grant said. The guard's eyes flicked toward him, then back to Isaiah. "Sir," Harlan said, quieter now, "please don't make this harder." Isaiah almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Harlan was not the source of the rot. He was the hand being asked to carry it, but hands still mattered. Isaiah bent down and picked up Noelle. She came into his arms without resistance, tired enough now that her head dropped against his collarbone. Her skin was too warm. Moth was trapped between them, one silver wing pressed flat against Isaiah's chest. He turned toward Vivienne. "I want it recorded that I asked for verification of North Star Vellum Holdings, tail number NV731Q, restricted owner file." Vivienne's mouth tightened. "That will be noted." "No," Isaiah said. "I want it recorded." Grant's voice sharpened. "You don't get to dictate internal procedure." Isaiah looked at him. "I know the procedure." Grant laughed once, a small sound, a mistake, not because it was loud, because it revealed him. Vivienne heard it too. Her eyes shifted toward Grant. For the first time, not with trust, with assessment. Tessa moved behind the desk, a tiny movement. Her hand reached toward the printer tray. Grant's head turned instantly. "Tessa." She froze again. The printer gave one soft click, then another. A page slid halfway out. Grant saw it. Isaiah saw it. Vivienne did not. Not yet. Harlan stepped closer. The younger guard mirrored him. The geometry tightened around Isaiah and Noelle. Outside the glass, rain ran in silver lines down the terminal windows. Beyond it, the runway lights glowed in the dark, each one reflected on the wet pavement like a small white flame. Isaiah had paid to replace those lights 3 months after Naomi died. The old ones had flickered in fog. He remembered standing at the edge of the runway with Everett Shaw and the contractor, signing the final approval with a pen that would not write because the night was too cold. Naomi had never seen them finished. Noelle had been too young to remember. But Isaiah remembered. He remembered every inch of the place people were now trying to remove him from. Vivienne spoke again. "This is your final opportunity to leave voluntarily." Isaiah looked at the lounge. Preston Vale had taken his seat now. He was watching with the annoyed curiosity of a man delayed by something he considered beneath the evening. The blanket remained behind him, unused. Isaiah looked back at Vivienne. No, the word was quiet. It did not need help. Grant's face flushed. Harlan took half a step forward. Noelle lifted her head from Isaiah's shoulder. "Daddy," she whispered, Are we going back in the rain? Isaiah looked down at her. Not at Grant. Not at Vivian. Not at the guards. Her. No, he said. Not tonight. Then he reached into the front pocket of his hoodie and took out his phone. Grant moved first. Sir, put the phone away. Isaiah did not. Vivian's eyes narrowed. Mr. Calder. He unlocked the screen with his thumb. The cracked corner lit up pale blue against the wet fabric of his sleeve. He scrolled once, found the number, pressed call. The terminal watched him do it. 1 ring. 2. Then a voice answered. Isaiah spoke 4 sentences. Everett. Halcyon. North Star file. Bring the hard copy. A pause. Noel's breath warmed his neck. Isaiah listened for 3 seconds. Then he said, 7 minutes is fine. He ended the call, put the phone back in his pocket, and stood there with his daughter in his arms while the rain kept hitting the glass. Grant looked at Vivienne. Vivienne looked at Isaiah. Tessa looked at the half-printed page. Harlan Pike looked at the floor. No one moved. Not yet. But something had shifted. Grant knew the word North Star. Vivian knew he knew it. Isaiah knew both of them had just realized the same thing. This was no longer a man asking to be believed. This was a man waiting for proof to arrive. 7 minutes can be very short when nothing is waiting for you. 7 minutes can also become a room. A long one. A bright one. Full of glass and rain and people pretending not to stare. Isaiah Calder stood in the center of Halcyon Air Harbor with Noel in his arms and let the first minute pass without saying anything. He did not look at the clock. He did not need to. His body had always measured time well, in boardrooms, in hospital corridors, in the small dark bedroom where Naomi once slept between treatments while he counted the seconds between her breaths, because fear made numbers feel useful. Noel's forehead rested against the side of his neck, still warm, too warm. He shifted her higher and felt Moth's bent silver wing press against his chest. Across the desk, Grant Sable had stopped performing patience. Something else had moved into his face now. Not panic. Not yet. But calculation. Fast calculation. The kind a man does when he hears a name he hoped would stay buried behind screens and passwords. North Star. Isaiah had seen the reaction. Vivian had seen enough of it to become still. That stillness mattered. She no longer looked only at Isaiah as the problem. Her eyes had begun to move between Isaiah and Grant. Back and forth. A line forming. Grant noticed. That was when he spoke. Ms. Rowe, he said, lowering his voice, we shouldn't allow this to continue on the public floor. Vivienne did not answer immediately. Grant pressed on. He's made a phone call. We don't know to whom. We have a private client delayed in the lounge, a minor present, and a security concern developing at the desk. The phrase security concern was neat. Professional. Empty enough to hold whatever meaning he needed it to hold later. Isaiah looked at him. Grant did not look back. He looked at Vivian. That told Isaiah something too. Grant was no longer trying to convince the man in front of him. He was trying to build the report. Vivian crossed her arms loosely. Who is North Star on tonight's movement sheet? Grant answered too quickly. A restricted ownership entity. Vivian's eyes narrowed by a fraction. I know that. Which aircraft? Grant hesitated. Only a beat. But in a room that had gone this quiet, a beat could become testimony. Nighthawk 7, he said. Tail number. Grant's mouth moved once before sound came out. NV731Q. Isaiah felt Noelle stir when she heard the number. She had heard it before, not as a business asset, not as a symbol of wealth. To Noelle, Nighthawk 7 was the airplane with the soft gray blanket in the back cabinet and the small drawer where her father kept ginger candies because her stomach did not like takeoff. She lifted her head a little. Is that our plane? Isaiah kept his voice gentle. Yes. Grant turned toward them. Mr. Calder, please don't confuse your child with claims we haven't verified. Noelle blinked at him. I'm not confused. The younger guard looked away again. Harlan Pike's fingers loosened from the radio clipped to his vest. Grant's face tightened. Vivian watched Noelle for 1 second too long. Then Preston Vale knocked on the lounge glass again. This time he stood up as he did it. The sound was small, but it cut through the terminal like a spoon against crystal. Vivian turned her head. Preston pointed at his watch. His assistant stood behind him with a phone pressed to her ear and a look that suggested someone important was being made to wait for someone unimportant. Grant moved toward the lounge door. "I'll reassure him." Vivian's voice stopped him. "No." Grant froze. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. "Stay here." For the first time that night, Grant looked unsettled. Not afraid of Isaiah. Afraid of losing control of Vivian. Tessa Wren sat very still at the secondary desk. The printed page had slid another inch from the machine. Only the top portion showed. ACCC Review. North Star Vellum Holdens. Tessa's hand rested near it, not touching. She looked like someone trying to decide whether courage had a sound. Isaiah saw her thumb move. Just once. Against the side of her index finger. A nervous habit. He did not ask her to speak. A person under another person's authority has to choose that moment for themselves. If someone forces it from them, it becomes another kind of pressure. The second minute passed. Rain ran down the glass in hard silver lines. Outside, the runway lights glowed across the wet field. Inside, every surface looked too clean for what was happening. White stone. Polished walnut. Gold trim. Soft chairs behind locked glass. Naomi would have hated the locked glass most of all. Not the security. She understood security. She had been practical. She had been the kind of woman who checked smoke detector batteries with a calendar reminder and kept spare medicine in 3 different bags. What she would have hated was the way security could be made to sound like kindness while doing the work of exclusion. Vivian stepped closer to the desk. "Grant," she said, "pull up the restricted file." Grant's answer came with a small laugh. Not amusement, stalling. "We can't open a restricted beneficial owner file without confirmed identity." Vivian looked at him. "Then start with the aircraft ownership summary. It will show the entity only. Open it." Grant's fingers touched the keyboard. He typed, slowly now. Too slowly. Isaiah watched his hands. Grant was not looking for the file. He was looking for a way around it. Tessa saw that too. Her chair made the smallest sound as she shifted. Grant stopped typing. "Tessa, I don't need assistance." She did not answer. Vivian turned. "What did you find?" Tessa's lips parted. Grant spoke before she could. "She accidentally opened an internal flag earlier. It happens with restricted profiles. The system throws irrelevant locks if you search from the wrong screen." Tessa looked down. That was the safe thing to do. For a moment, Isaiah thought she would stay there. Then Noelle coughed. A small dry cough into Isaiah's hoodie. Tessa looked up again. Her eyes moved to the child, then to the lounge blanket still lying unused behind Preston, then to the half-printed page. She reached for it. Grant's voice sharpened. "Tessa." She pulled the page free. The sound of paper leaving the tray was quiet. It still made everyone look. Tessa stood. Her hand shook once, then steadied around the paper. "I opened it from the correct screen," she said. Grant stared at her. Vivienne said nothing. Tessa held the page out, but not to Grant, to Vivienne. "I didn't get the full file. I don't have permission for that. But the access review shows the tail number is tied to North Star, and North Star has a restricted beneficial owner file." Mr. Penting. Calder asked for that exact file category before security was called. The terminal held the sentence. Grant took one step toward her. "That is enough." Isaiah did not move. Harlan Pike did. Only slightly. He shifted his body so he stood between Grant's path and Tessa's shoulder. Not obvious. Not heroic. Just enough. Grant noticed. So did Isaiah. Vivian took the page from Tessa. She read it. The first line. The second. The third. Something in her posture changed. The cream blazer did not soften. The gold watch did not stop shining. But the woman wearing them seemed, for the first time, less certain that the room had arranged itself correctly around her. She looked at Grant. "You told me there was no matching record." Grant's voice cooled. "I said there was no personal authorization under his name. That is not the same thing." "No, but it is the relevant thing for lounge access." Isaiah spoke then. Quietly. "Only if you stop checking there." Grant's head turned. This time he met Isaiah's eyes. There was no smile left. "You don't know our procedure." Isaiah held Noelle closer. "I know the difference between a procedure and an excuse." The words did not land loudly. They landed clean. Vivienne's eyes moved to Isaiah, For a second, he could see the question forming behind them. Not who are you pretending to be? Something closer to who did I fail to recognize? The third minute passed. Then the fourth. Preston Vale opened the lounge door himself. The automatic lock clicked because Grant had left it released. Preston stepped out with his phone still in one hand. I don't mean to interrupt whatever this is, he said in a tone that meant he absolutely did, but I have a departure window. Vivienne turned toward him. Mr. Vale, please return to the lounge. I was told my aircraft was being prepared. Isaiah looked at him then, not with anger, with interest. My aircraft, Preston repeated, glancing at Isaiah for the first time, as if noticing a piece of luggage left in the walkway. Grant moved fast. Mr. Atoint, Vale, we're resolving a clerical issue. Preston looked from Grant to Vivienne, then resolve it. I'm not spending the night in North Carolina because someone wandered into the wrong terminal. Noelle lifted her head. Isaiah felt her hear it. Wandered. Wrong terminal. The words joined the others already collected in the room. Walk-in. Outside. Security concern. People hiding from the weather. Vivienne heard them too. This time she did not immediately protect Preston from the ugliness of what he had said. That was new. Small, but new. Mr. Vale, she said, more firmly. Return to the lounge. Preston's eyebrows lifted. Grant looked alarmed. Isaiah stayed still. Noelle whispered into his ear. Daddy, is he taking our plane? Every face near the desk heard it. Preston's eyes narrowed. Our plane? Grant closed his eyes for half a second. Too late. Vivienne turned slowly back to him. What exactly did you tell Mr. Bell? Grant's throat moved. I told him the North Star aircraft was pending final clearance. That was not my question. Grant did not answer. The 5th minute passed. Tessa lowered the page she was still holding. Harlan Pike shifted again, not toward Isaiah now, but away from him. The younger guard followed his lead. The geometry around Isaiah loosened. Not enough to free him, enough to show that even security had begun to understand they might have been placed on the wrong side of the room. Then the front doors opened. Cold air came in first. Rain followed it in a thin spray across the stone. A man stepped through the entrance carrying a brown leather document case under one arm. He was older than Isaiah by almost 20 years, tall, silver-haired, wearing a dark overcoat buttoned wrong in the haste of leaving somewhere warm. Everett Shaw did not stop at the reception line. He did not ask where to go. He crossed the terminal with the directness of a man who had drafted half the documents that gave the building its legal shape. Grant saw him. All color left his face. Vivienne saw Grant see him. That was the 6th minute. Everett stopped in front of Isaiah. For one brief second, his eyes moved to Noelle. The fever in her cheeks, the stuffed moth crushed against her father's chest, the wet hoodie, the guards, the terminal director, the wealthy investor standing outside the lounge. Everett's jaw tightened once. Then he looked at Isaiah. Mr. Calder, he said, voice low and formal, I'm sorry it took 7 minutes. The 7th minute ended, and nobody in Halcyon Air Harbor moved. Everett Shaw placed the brown leather document case on the reception counter. The sound was small, flat, final. Grant Sable looked at the case as if it had been set down on his chest. Vivienne Rowe did not speak. Neither did Preston Vale. For several seconds, the whole terminal seemed to wait for someone else to explain what had just entered the room. Everett removed a pair of reading glasses from his coat pocket and put them on with the careful patience of a man who had never needed volume to be heard. Then he looked at Vivienne. Are you the terminal director on duty? Vivienne's posture straightened. Yes. Vivienne Rowe. Everett Shaw. Counsel of Record for North Star Vellum Holdings and personal trustee representative for Mr. Isaiah Calder. Grant's mouth opened. No sound came out. Everett turned one page in the folder. Before we go further, I need to ask a simple question. His eyes moved from Vivienne to Grant. Who authorized Preston Vale into the North Star Lounge? The question did not land where Preston expected it to land. He frowned. Excuse me? Everett did not look at him yet. Grant stepped forward too quickly. Mr. Vale is a priority client with active outbound arrangements pending final clearance. That was not my question, Everett said. His voice stayed mild. That made it worse. I asked who authorized him into the North Star Lounge. Vivian looked at Grant. Grant adjusted his cuffs. The lounge access was temporary. Operational discretion. Everett nodded once, as if he had just received exactly the answer he expected. Operational discretion. He opened the folder. The first sheet was thick cream paper with a seal embossed near the top. Vivian saw the seal before she saw the words. Halcyon Air Harbor Ownership Transfer. North Star Vellum Holdings. Grant saw it too. His face changed in a way he could not hide fast enough. Everett slid the page across the counter toward Vivian. Halcyon Air Harbor was acquired 11 months ago by North Star Vellum Holdings. Vivian read without touching the paper. Her eyes moved line by line. Everett placed a second document beside the first. North Star Vellum Holdings is held through a restricted beneficial ownership structure. A third document. Isaiah Calder is the principal beneficial owner. Noelle lifted her head from Isaiah's shoulder. She looked at Everett, then at her father, then at the papers. Daddy? Isaiah looked down at her. I'm here. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Is he talking about you? Yes, baby. Vivian did not move. Her eyes stayed on the documents as if reading them slowly enough could change what they said. Everett placed a fourth sheet on the counter. This is the aircraft ownership summary for NV731Q, operating name Nighthawk 7. He turned the page so everyone at the desk could see the line. Registered asset owner, North Star Vellum Holdings. Authorized principal, Isaiah M. Calder. Everett finally looked at Preston Vale. Mr. Vale, you are not authorized for that aircraft. Preston's expression hardened. I was told arrangements had been made. By whom? Preston looked at Grant. Grant's hand moved to the edge of the counter. Not gripping it. Almost. I said final clearance was pending, Grant said. Everett turned another page. Interesting. That single word made Grant go still. Everett lifted a printed access note. At 12:09 a.m. Senior Client Concierge Grant Sable entered the following notation into the system. Unverified walk-in claiming North Star access. Possible weather shelter request. Security review recommended. The words sat there. Possible weather shelter request. Noelle heard them. Isaiah felt her fingers tighten in the fabric of his hoodie. Everett continued. At 12:14 a.m., the same user opened temporary lounge access for Preston Vale under the North Star Lounge profile despite incomplete authorization. Vivian looked up at Grant. Slowly. Grant spoke fast now. Ms. Rowe, the situation at the desk was escalating. I made a judgment call to preserve client operations. Isaiah looked at him. You wrote weather shelter request. Grant did not answer him. Isaiah stepped closer to the counter, Noelle still in his arms. His voice remained low. I told you my daughter had a fever. Grant's jaw tightened. I documented what the situation appeared to be at the time. What it appeared to be, Isaiah said. Grant looked at him then. Yes. Isaiah held his gaze. That is the part you should be worried about. Nobody spoke. The rain filled the silence. Everett removed one final page from the folder and placed it on top of the others. This is the restricted owner file request log. Mr. Calder asked for the correct file category. Twice. He looked at Tessa. Ms. Rekachine? Wren, did you attempt to open that file? Tessa's eyes flicked to Grant, then to Vivian, then to Noelle. Yes, she said. The word came out thin but clear. When Mr. Calder gave the tail number. Grant turned toward her. Tessa, she flinched. But she did not stop. I saw the North Star restricted flag. I tried to tell Mr. Sable. Grant's voice lowered. You were assigned coffee service. Tessa swallowed. And he told me to stop looking. The younger security guard looked down at his shoes. Harlan Pike stared straight ahead. Vivienne did not take her eyes off Tessa. Everett looked back at Grant. Did you prevent a junior concierge from escalating a restricted ownership match? Grant gave a tight laugh. She had no authority to escalate anything. Everett nodded again. Correct. Grant blinked. Everett closed the folder halfway. She did not have authority to open the full beneficial owner file. You did. The sentence struck cleanly. Grant's face went blank. Vivian's hand moved to the edge of the counter. This time, she did grip it. Noelle shifted in Isaiah's arms. Her cheek rubbed against Moth's silver wing. Daddy, she whispered, is this your airport? Isaiah looked at the glass walls, the lounge, the chairs, the runway lights outside in the rain. The building Naomi had once imagined, kinder than this. Part of it, he said. Noel looked at the chairs behind the glass. Then why didn't they let you sit down? The question did what the documents could not. The papers proved ownership. The child proved the failure. Vivienne's face changed. Not dramatically. No tears. No collapse. Just a stillness that stopped being control and became recognition. Grant tried one more time. Mr. Calder, if we had known who you were, of course this would have been handled differently. Isaiah looked at him. That is the whole problem. Grant's mouth closed. Isaiah adjusted Noel in his arms and turned slightly so she could rest her head again. You should not need to know what a man owns before you decide whether his sick child can sit in an empty chair. Preston Vale gave a short, impatient breath. With respect, this seems like an internal matter. I have a schedule. Everett looked at him at last. Mr. Pryor. Vale, your authorization is incomplete. You were admitted into a restricted lounge profile attached to an aircraft you do not control. I suggest you return to the public seating area while Halcyon reviews whether your charter request can proceed at all. Preston stared at him. No one moved to open the lounge door for him. That was new. Vivienne turned to Grant. Her voice was quiet. Open the full access history. Grant's eyes flashed. Vivienne, I don't think that's appropriate on the floor. Open it. Grant did not move. Isaiah watched him. Everett watched him. Tessa watched him. Vivienne watched him most of all. Grant's hand stayed beside the keyboard, still, refusing. Isaiah looked at Vivienne. He won't. Grant turned sharply. Vivienne's voice came out colder than before. Why not? Grant said nothing. The terminal waited. The leather document case sat open on the counter. The restricted file pages lay under the white lights. Noel's breathing warmed Isaiah's neck. Outside, Nighthawk 7 rested beyond the rain-streaked glass, quiet and dark, as if it too were waiting. Isaiah looked at Grant one last time. Then he said, because the full history will show this was never about verification. Vivienne did not blink. Grant did, and that was enough. Vivienne Rowe turned the screen toward herself. Grant Sable moved half a step closer as if proximity could become permission. Vivienne, he said quietly, we should take this into the office. She did not look at him. Open the access history. Grant's voice dropped lower. This is not appropriate in front of a client. Isaiah looked through the lounge glass at Preston Vale. He is not the client attached to that file. The sentence landed cleanly. Preston's face hardened. Grant's fingers hovered above the keyboard. He did not type. Everett Shaw closed the leather folder with two slow hands. Ms. Mornall, Rowe, he said, as counsel for the ownership entity, I am formally requesting that Halcyon preserve the full access history, user notes, camera timestamps, lounge override records, and internal messages connected to North Star Bellum Holdings and aircraft NV731Q from 11:45 p.m. onward. Grant swallowed. Vivienne heard it. So did Isaiah. Grant, she said. One word. No warmth left in it. Grant's hand finally touched the keyboard. The screen changed. A login box appeared. Then a second verification prompt. Then a table of entries filled the monitor. Vivienne leaned toward it. Everett stayed still. Isaiah stayed still. Tessa Wren stood behind the secondary desk, both hands pressed lightly against the edge, as if she needed the desk to remind her she was still standing. Noelle rested against Isaiah's shoulder again. Her fever had made her heavy, not asleep, just quiet. That kind of exhausted quiet children enter when they know adults are speaking about something too large for them, but they still feel the shape of it. Vivienne read the first entry, then the second. Her eyes slowed at the third. Grant looked away. Everett spoke. Read it aloud. Vivienne's jaw tightened, not at Everett, at what was on the screen. She read anyway. 12:03 a.m. Guest arrival at reception, Isaiah Calder. Requested access to North Star Lounge and aircraft NV731Q. She stopped. Everett waited. Vivienne continued. 12,004 a.m. User Grant Sable opened standard personal client search. Her eyes moved down. 12205 a mine. Restricted entity prompt generated. North Star Vellum Holdings. Beneficial owner file locked pending senior verification. Tessa's lips parted. She looked at Grant. Grant stared at the floor. Vivian kept reading. 12:06 a.m. User dismissed restricted entity prompt. No one moved. Rain tapped against the glass with steady little strikes. Vivian read the next line more slowly. 12:09 a manual. Noundywold entered. Unverified walk-in claiming North Star access. Possible weather shelter request. Security review recommended. Noelle lifted her head a little. Daddy, did he write that about us? Isaiah looked at her. Yes. But I was sick. I know. Her brow pinched. Why didn't he write that? The question moved through the terminal without needing an answer. Grant's face flushed dark. Vivian did not defend him. That silence was the first honest thing she had done since walking out of the office. She read on. 12:12 a.m. Preston Vale arrival. Incomplete charter documentation pending. Preston shifted his stance. Vivian's eyes stayed on the screen. 12:14 a.m. User Grant Sable issued temporary lounge override under North Star Lounge profile. Everett looked at Grant. You gave another man access under Mr. Calder's profile. Grant looked up. I gave a temporary hospitality hold while documents were completed. No, Tessa said. The word came from her before fear could catch it. Everyone turned. Tessa went pale, but she did not step back. Grant's eyes narrowed. What did you say? Tessa looked at Vivian, then at Isaiah, then at Noelle. Her voice shook once, then steadied. It wasn't the system. Grant went still. Tessa took one breath. The system gave the restricted owner prompt. Mr. Calder gave the correct holding company and tail number. The system did what it was supposed to do. Vivian turned fully toward her. Tessa's hands tightened on the desk. I tried to tell him there was a match. He told me to handle coffee service. Then, he wrote the weather shelter note before he finished checking the file. Grant's voice came out sharp. You are a junior concierge. Tessa flinched. Then Harlan Pike spoke. She's also telling the truth. Grant turned toward the guard. Harlan's face remained expressionless, but his voice was firm now. I was by the side doors. I heard Mr. Calder give the tail number before security was called. The younger guard nodded once. Vivian looked at Grant. For the first time, there was no professional screen left between them. Just a woman seeing the choice she had protected. Grant straightened, trying to recover height. Ms. Rowe, I made a judgment call based on guest presentation, incomplete identity verification, and terminal safety. Isaiah looked at him. Guest presentation. Grant looked at him and realized too late that he had said the quiet part in a language everyone understood. Everett removed his glasses. Thank you, Mr. Sable. Grant blinked. For what? For naming the actual standard you used. Vivian's face tightened. Grant turned to her. That is not what I meant. But it is what you did, Vivian said. Her voice had changed. It was quieter now. Not weak. Stripped. Grant's mouth opened again, but Vivian lifted one hand. This time, the gesture was not used to silence Isaiah. It was used to silence him. Remove your badge. Grant stared at her. What? Remove your badge and step away from the desk. You can't be serious. I am. Grant looked toward Everett, then Isaiah, then Preston. The people he had wanted to impress were now witnesses. His hand went to the silver badge on his jacket. For a few seconds, he could not make his fingers work. Then the badge came loose. Senior Client Concierge, Grant Sable. He placed it on the counter. The metal made a small sound against the stone. Noelle watched it. Daddy, she whispered. Is that the man who loses his badge? Isaiah's eyes stayed on Grant. Yes. Grant's face twisted with anger and humiliation. You're firing me over one misunderstanding? Isaiah answered before Vivian could. No. Grant looked at him. Isaiah's voice stayed even. You're losing your badge because you had a chance to check a file and chose to check a man's shoes instead. The words were not shouted. They did not need to be. Grant's shoulders dropped by a fraction. Vivian turned to Harlan. Escort Mr. Sable to the staff office. He is suspended pending immediate termination review. His system access is revoked as of now. Everett spoke gently. Ownership will classify it as termination for cause once the records are copied. Grant looked at Vivian. For a moment, he seemed to expect rescue. She did not give it. Harlan stepped forward. This time he did not look ashamed of where he stood. "Mr. Sable," he said, "come with me." Grant picked up nothing from the desk. Not his pen, not his tablet, not the folded note card beside the monitor. He walked past Isaiah without looking at him, but as he passed Noelle, his eyes flicked toward the silver moth in her arms. For 1 second, something like regret crossed his face. Too late. Then Harlan led him toward the staff corridor. The younger guard followed at a distance. The glass door closed behind them. The terminal exhaled, not loudly, but enough that everyone felt it. Preston Vale cleared his throat. "Now that this has been resolved, can we return to my departure?" Nobody answered him. Vivienne looked at him as if seeing him clearly for the first time too. "Mr. Vale, your authorization is incomplete. You should not have been admitted to the North Star Lounge." Preston's face reddened. "I was invited in. Improperly. I have people waiting. So does Mr. Calder." Preston looked at Isaiah then. Really looked at him. Not at the hoodie, not at the sneakers. At him. Isaiah gave him nothing. Everett turned to Vivienne. "Mr. Vale needs to be moved out of the restricted lounge while his paperwork is reviewed." Vivienne nodded. Tessa straightened. "Yes, Ms. Rowe. Please escort Mr. Vale to the general waiting area and notify Charter Operations that his departure is on hold until legal clearance is complete." Preston stared at her. "You're moving me out there?" Vivienne looked at the empty public seating beside the coffee bar. "It is heated." The words echoed what she had offered Isaiah earlier. This time, everyone heard the mirror in them. Preston's mouth tightened, but he said nothing. Tessa stepped toward the lounge door. Her hand trembled only once when she touched the access panel. The door unlocked. She held it open. "Mr. Vale," she said. Not rude, not apologetic, just firm. Preston took his coat from the couch and walked out. The cream blanket fell from the back of the sofa onto the floor behind him. Noelle noticed. Vivienne noticed too. Something in her face softened with shame. She stepped into the lounge herself, picked up the blanket, folded it once, and came back through the glass door. Then she walked to Isaiah, not to the counter. To Isaiah. She stopped a respectful distance away. "Mr. Calder," she said, "I owe you and your daughter an apology." Isaiah said nothing. That was the only honest response he could give her. An apology delivered after proof is not the same as kindness offered before it. Vivienne understood that. Her eyes moved to Noelle. "Noelle," she said softly, "I am sorry we made you stand when you needed to rest." Noelle looked at her, then at the blanket. "Can my daddy sit too?" Vivienne's eyes closed for half a second. When she opened them, they were wet, but not crying. "Yes," she said. "He can." She held out the blanket. Not to Isaiah, to Noelle. Noelle looked at her father. Isaiah nodded once. She took it. Vivienne turned toward the lounge. "Open the North Star Lounge." Tessa paused near the access panel. Vivienne looked at Isaiah. "And keep it open." The glass door slid aside. For the first time that night, no one stood in the way. Isaiah carried Noelle across the threshold. 8 steps. That was all it had ever been. 8 steps from humiliation to warmth. 8 steps from policy to humanity. 8 steps a sick child should never have had to earn. He lowered Noelle onto the nearest leather chair. Tessa brought a fresh towel without being asked. The server brought water. The younger guard brought a small thermometer from the first aid cabinet. Harlan returned from the staff corridor and stood near the door, not as a barrier now, but as protection. Everett stayed by the counter, copying records into a secure file. Vivienne remained inside the lounge, hands folded in front of her, looking at the chairs Naomi had once imagined. Isaiah sat beside Noelle. She leaned into him immediately. The blanket covered her knees. Moth rested on top of it, silver wing bent but still shining under the warm light. For a while, nobody said anything. Then Vivienne spoke. "Mr. Calder, I will submit my resignation tonight if that is what you want." Isaiah looked at her. Grant had wanted to escape blame. Vivienne was asking to receive it. That difference mattered, but it did not erase what had happened. "No," Isaiah said. Vivienne looked surprised. He kept his voice low. "My daughter watched you choose image over need. She also needs to watch what it looks like when an adult, stays and repairs what she broke. Vivian's face changed, not relief, responsibility. Isaiah continued, "You will remain terminal director for 60 days under review. You will rewrite the verification protocol with Everett, Tessa, and security. You will work the front desk every Friday night until you understand what your staff sees before they decide who matters." Vivian nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. And you will remove the phrase client environment from every training document in this building." Vivian swallowed. "Yes." Isaiah looked toward Tessa. "Ms. Wren." Tessa froze. "Yes, Mr. Calder. Starting tonight, you are acting guest experience lead." Her eyes widened. Grant's empty badge still lay on the counter behind her. "I'm not sure I'm qualified." Isaiah looked at Noelle, then back at Tessa. "You saw the file. You saw the child. You told the truth." He paused. "That is more qualification than this room had 5 minutes ago." Tessa's eyes filled, but she blinked the tears back. "Yes, sir." Noelle tugged lightly on Isaiah's sleeve. "Daddy?" "Yes, baby." "Can Ms. Tessa make sure the chairs stay for tired people?" Isaiah looked at Tessa. Tessa looked at Noelle. Then she nodded. "I can do that." Vivienne looked down at the floor. Everett had closed his document case. Outside, the rain began to soften. Beyond the glass, the runway lights still burned white against the dark field. Isaiah looked at them through the warmth of the lounge and thought of Naomi. No hidden rulers, real chairs, people with power remembering they were being watched by the people affected by it. He reached down and smoothed Moth's silver wing flat across Noelle's blanket. Then he looked at Vivienne, Tessa, Harlan, and Everett. "This building was not bought to impress people who already know they matter," he said. "It was bought to prove that dignity does not have a dress code." No one answered. They did not need to. For the first time that night, the silence inside Halcyon Air Harbor had peace in it. 3 months later, Halcyon Air Harbor looked almost the same from the outside. Same glass walls, same low roof, same runway lights stretching across the dark field like a line of quiet stars. Same polished stone floor inside the entrance. Same walnut panels. Same private lounge behind clear glass. But buildings can change without changing shape. Sometimes the first sign is not a new wall or a new sign. Sometimes it is a chair moved closer to the door. At 9:42 on a cold Friday night, a family of 4 stepped into the terminal under a hard winter rain. The father was carrying 2 backpacks. The mother had a toddler on her hip and a sleeping boy pressed against her side. Their coats were damp. Their shoes left small wet marks on the stone. They looked tired in the honest way. Ordinary people look tired after a long day of delays, traffic, children, and weather. Nobody at Halcyon Air Harbor looked away. Tessa Wren saw them before they reached the desk. She had changed in 3 months, but not in the ways people usually noticed first. Her navy blazer was still simple. Her hair was still pinned back. Her voice was still gentle, but there was a steadiness in her now. The kind that comes when someone learns that truth may shake in your hands and still be truth. She stepped from behind the counter with a towel folded over one arm. "Good evening," she said. "You're safe from the rain now. Let's get you warm first, then we'll sort out the details." The mother blinked, surprised by the order of those words. Warm first, details second. The little boy leaned against her leg, half asleep. Tessa crouched slightly so she could speak to him without making him look up too far. "Would you like to sit down?" He nodded. Tessa turned and gestured toward the row of chairs nearest the entrance. Not decorative chairs. Real chairs. Close enough that no tired person had to earn them. A staff member brought water without being told. Another brought a dry towel for the toddler's shoes. No one asked the family what they owned before helping them hold what they were carrying. From the director's office, Vivienne Rowe watched through the glass. She still wore cream sometimes, but not like armor anymore. On Fridays, she worked the front desk beside the junior staff. At first, everyone had thought it was punishment. Then they watched her do it. She checked IDs. She carried luggage. She apologized when the system was slow. She learned the names of night cleaners, mechanics, shuttle drivers, pilots, caterers, and the security guards who saw the building after polished people left it. She rewrote every training page that had once used words like client environment as a soft way to say some people belonged more than others. The new policy was shorter. Verify without humiliating. Protect privacy without denying humanity. Offer warmth before judgment. Document facts, not assumptions. Escalate uncertainty, never ego. Those 5 lines now hung inside the staff room, not framed in gold, printed on plain paper. Taped near the coffee machine where everyone had to see them when they were tired. Harlan Pike stood near the side doors, arms folded, watching the family settle into the chairs. He no longer stood like a wall waiting to close. He stood like someone responsible for keeping doors from being used wrongly. When Tessa looked over, he gave one small nod. She returned it. Through the lounge glass, a few private clients sat quietly with coffee and open laptops. One of them glanced at the Wet family near the entrance, then looked back down. Not because he did not care, because there was nothing strange to stare at anymore. That was the point. Dignity had become normal enough to stop being dramatic. At 9:51, the front doors opened again. Isaiah Calder stepped in with Noelle beside him. No rain on his hoodie this time. No fever in his daughter's cheeks. No sleeping child on his shoulder. No security moving toward him. No locked glass door waiting to decide whether he belonged. Noelle wore a yellow coat with wooden buttons and carried Moth tucked carefully under one arm. The silver wing had been repaired. Not perfectly. Isaiah had done it himself one Sunday afternoon at the kitchen table, with Naomi's old sewing tin open beside him and Noelle watching like the operation mattered more than anything on earth. The stitches were uneven. He had left them that way. Some repairs should show the hands that made them. Tessa saw them and smiled. "Good evening, Mr. Calder." Isaiah shook his head once. "Isaiah is fine." Tessa smiled a little wider. "Good evening, Isaiah." Noelle stepped forward. "Hi, Miss Tessa." "Hi, Miss Tessa." "Hi, Noelle." Noelle looked past her toward the entrance chairs. A small wooden shelf now stood beside them. On it were picture books, coloring pages, a basket of clean blankets, and a little brass plaque shaped like a moth. Noelle stared at it. Then she walked over slowly. The moth plaque was not shiny in a loud way. It was small, almost hidden. A child would notice it before most adults did. Under it, engraved in simple letters, were 6 words. For tired people. No dress code. Noelle touched the plaque with one finger. Then she looked at Isaiah. "Daddy, I see it. Did Mommy ask for this?" Isaiah walked to her side. For a moment, the terminal around him softened. The glass. The runway. The chairs. The people. All of it blurred around the memory of Naomi at a kitchen table with drawings spread out and a pencil in her hand. Real chairs. Close enough. Isaiah swallowed once. "She asked for the chairs," he said. Noelle looked at the moth. "Then we added the moth?" "We did." She nodded seriously, as if that made perfect sense. Vivienne came out of the office then. She stopped a few steps away, not wanting to interrupt the moment. Isaiah turned. "Ms. Rummins." "Rowe." "Mr. Calder." There was still formality between them. Not coldness. Memory. Some things healed best when no one pretended they had never been broken. Vivienne looked toward the family sitting near the entrance. They arrived without full passenger verification. Charter Operations is still sorting out the manifest. Isaiah waited. Vivienne continued. They were wet. Their children were tired. Tessa seated them first and started verification after. Isaiah nodded. "Good." Vivienne's mouth moved almost into a smile. "I thought you should know." Noelle turned from the moth plaque. "Did anyone make them stand?" Vivienne looked at her. "No. Did anyone look at their shoes?" Vivienne paused, then answered honestly. "I noticed they were wet." Noelle's eyebrows lifted. Vivienne added, "So we brought towels." Noelle considered that. Then she smiled. "Good." The word seemed to release something in Vivienne's shoulders that 3 months of policy work had not. Isaiah watched it happen. He had not kept Vivienne because she deserved comfort. He had kept her because repair required witnesses. And because firing one person can satisfy a room, but changing a room requires someone to stay inside it long enough to move the chairs. Across the terminal, the little boy from the Wet family had fallen asleep under a blanket. His father sat beside him with both hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee. His mother leaned back in the chair and closed her eyes for the first time since entering. No one bothered them. No one made them explain tiredness. No one made them purchase dignity with proof. Everett Shaw arrived a few minutes later with his overcoat unbuttoned and a folder under one arm. He looked at the moth plaque, then at Isaiah. Naomi would have approved. Isaiah smiled faintly. She would have asked why the plaque took 3 months. Everett nodded. That too. Noelle lifted Moth toward the little brass emblem. "Look," she whispered to the stuffed animal. "You have a cousin." Tessa laughed softly. Even Vivian did, not loudly, just enough. Outside, Nighthawk 7 waited beyond the rain-streaked glass, ready but not urgent. The runway lights burned steady across the field. Isaiah stood with his daughter in the building that had once tried to throw them back into the storm, and for the first time, Halcyon Air Harbor felt like what Naomi had meant it to become. Not a place where wealthy people proved they belonged. A place where tired people were helped before they had to defend themselves. That night did not turn Isaiah Calder into a kinder man. He had already been kind. It did not turn Noelle into a braver child. She had already been brave. What it changed was the room, the rules, the people who enforced them, the quiet assumptions that had lived inside polished glass and professional voices. And maybe that is where real justice begins. Not only when the cruel lose power, but when the next tired father walks through the door and no one mistakes his wet coat for his worth. This story is fictional, but the lesson is real. A person's dignity should never depend on clothing, money, status, or the room they are standing in. Protocols matter. Security matters. But no policy should become an excuse to forget the human being in front of you. Sometimes the smallest question from a child can expose what adults have learned to hide. And sometimes the strongest answer is not revenge. It is building a place where the next person is treated better. So if this story stayed with you, remember Noelle's question. Do we have to look rich before they let us sit down? The answer should always be no.